Okay, it looks like we are live. How is everyone today? Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are in the world. My name is Jason Levine, and such a pleasure to be here on Adobe Live with all of you today, talking about something very close to my heart, sound design in Adobe Audition. This is going to be part one of two, so next week we'll do kind of a continuation and finish up the video that we're working on. This is some new content. I'll reference some earlier content first, just to kind of give you a little bit of context. And I'm essentially going to go through a bunch of my own personal tips and tricks for cutting sound to picture, particularly where you're having to add things like, special effects and Foley and ambient sound, and really just some best practices for doing that. Additionally, we're going to talk a little bit about some of the things that I did for this particular production that we're going to work on here, which is leveraging Adobe stock content, because I couldn't find all the sound effects that I needed. So I'm going to show you a couple of places where you can acquire sound effects, free, royalty-free ones, which are very cool, some of which actually ship with Audition, some of which you can find courtesy of the BBC, because about a year ago they made 25,000 of their classic sound effects available to you. So you've got a lot of options out there. And then, of course, there's gazillions of sound effects libraries that you can purchase, some of which I have too, and a couple of which I'll use some of those files and examples with the stuff that we have here. So just to point out too, with this particular masterclass, unlike my daily live streams, this is the live interactive chat version. So I'm watching all of you. That sounds creepy. I'm watching all of you in the chat, and I'll be able to respond as things are happening. So it's great to have you all here, and I hope you're up for some intense sound layering. You just saw Paul do some amazing stuff with layers in Photoshop. Well, that is really what sound design is about. It's all about layering sound to create a punch, to create an explosion, to create whatever it is. Seldom do you have one sound that does it all. It's all about layering and getting creative with layering and effects and processes and time stretching, and we're going to cover the bulk of that today. All right. So as always, thank you so much for joining. Let's go ahead and switch over to my screen, and I'm going to quickly show you an example of something that I did actually on before. Well, I guess, did we call it Adobe Live then, Tim? I can't remember. And I just use this as an example because this is already done, and it kind of shows how things are stacked up, layers of sound to build something against an animation. So a couple of years ago, we had our good friend Synapse, who many of you may know on Twitch, and he created this amazing animation for what we were then calling Creativity 360, which you can see on the screen here. So he delivered this super cool animation, and part of the Adobe live stream was that he was building this animation in Cinema 4D and After Effects, and then I did the live sound design over about 3 days, much like the streams that we do that you see every week here on Adobe Live. So let me go ahead and play this back for you so you can kind of hear everything. Actually, you know what? First, let me just play it without sound so you can get an idea of what it looks like. So this is the animation. Very sci-fi. It's a title sequence animation, right? So you got a lot of movement here. Synapse, just a genius creating this stuff, all right? Nice little glassy explosion there, particles, all right? And then, of course, to make this really pop, to make this something that's going to move you, it's all about the sound design. So let's take a quick look and a listen now to the final version with all of the sound, all right? Okay. So every time you see something on screen that catches your eye, whether it's a flash of light or the twirling of the text or whatever it is, all of those sounds need to be designed. Now, for those of you who work in like animation and cartoons, this is also known as Mickey Mousing. So, when a character, if you've ever watched any of the classic like Mickey Mouse cartoons or the old Merry Melodies, you see a character walking and they would do something like do 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 do, and usually that would be like with a xylophone or a marimba or something. Every action that causes your eye to react has to have a sound kind of attached to it to really sell it. You don't need, it's not a have to, you can do whatever you want. But if you really want to sell all that motion, all those elements, it's all about, again, layering and getting creative with what do those things even sound like? Now, all of the sounds contained in here were actually accessed via the Adobe Audition Loopology sound effects library, which in Audition, if you go up to the Help menu, zoom in here for you, and you'll see right here, it says download sound effects and more. So here, let me just go there real quickly. Let's see. This opens up our browser here. There you go. And you'll see this is an old page. We never even rebranded the page here. But right at the top, sound effects, 27 bundles, 10,000 high quality sound effects. If you go into view downloads, they're all zipped up collections based on different types of sounds that you would need. So in this case, things like ambience, animals, cartoony sounds like I was just talking about, crashes, drones, fire, explosions, Foley, footsteps, impacts, industry. Impacts could be useful for the thing we're going to do just in a bit. You know, production elements, sci-fi, sports, technology, transportation. You can't imagine when you're doing sound for video, you know, someone closes the car door. You might get lucky capturing that sound on set, but chances are it's just going to be sort of far away and off mic and off axis, and it's not going to be enough. So you've got to replace that. Well, this has hundreds and hundreds of vehicles, and we even list out like, you know, Chevy Silverado truck, 1995, passenger door closing, passenger door slamming, all these kinds of things. It gets very specific in the metadata of these files. So just to quickly show you, this is where you can access all of those and download. This is not a follow along, but if you want to start augmenting your productions with royalty-free sound effects, you have access to them already as CC members, all right? Cool. What are we seeing here? The genius Carl Stalling with the Merry Melodies cartoon soundtracks. He'd watch the film once and score it, then play it with his full orchestra. Yes, I'm all about that too. Actually, the music for this was created in the same way. I was very inspired by Carl, and yeah, super cool. Tim is going in Twitch's signature purple color. Yes, indeed. Okay, so again, every single element that you see in here, all these little blips of light. In fact, there's one right here. I mean, is that what light sounds like? No, but there was this action on screen and I needed something to draw your attention. So that little bzz, which is part of the sci-fi sound effects, just kind of did the trick. Now, again, in terms of layering, when we look at things like this text coming into its stop position, so it's twirling, right? There's this huge, super cool, this is from the sci-fi collection. Let's see, what does it say? Electronic fluttering noise here. You might say, how did you get the tempo just right? I mean, I didn't. I just lined it up and it sort of worked. We'll get into that in a moment. There are things you can do to adjust that. Generally, if it's within sort of around the same tempo, it's just going to look right. It doesn't have to be exact because your brain kind of smooths over any of the inconsistencies as long as the sounds themselves are timed properly against the events. Now, the first element, though, when it came into its stop position, I used a door sound. So we have a bunch of Foley door slams in that collection. So here's what that sounds like. Let's turn off the whirl sound. Not very dramatic, right? So I wanted it more metallic sounding. So I found Foley metal pounding. So let's wind this back and take a listen now. We've got the door and pounding metal. And it's cool because you kind of get like the Creativity 360, the two elements kind of closing together. Still not quite big enough. I found another one, metal sheet tapping. All right, so here we go. Now you have this nice kind of metal, vibrating metal sheet, almost like a plate reverb. And then the last one here, this was, look at that, Chevy Trailblazer door close interior. Okay, so that's what this one is. So all together, and if we put our twirly sound back on there, and similarly with the explosions, it's a combination of things. So let's put all that on now. And if you take a look, it's again, two files here for the explosion. Let me show you. So we have one, which is blast, debris, fire, heavy crackle. The crackle has some of that nice glass element to it, but I wanted more sub. And that's what this explode thud track is representing. So another separate clip of that layered together, panned in stereo. You just get this massively big, beautiful sound, okay? So it's all about the layering. It's all about timing these things correctly. And as long as it matches the action on screen, it's just fun to do. It takes time. Okay, so let's get to it. So I'm gonna close this. And let's go ahead and open up the project we'll be working on. All right. What's up, Anna Brackett? Okay. So here is the scene that we have. This actually came to me from, there were quite a few requests for, like, you know, punching sounds. How do you do punches? Punches are really hard. We'll talk about that in just a second, but let's go ahead. Let me play this back so you can kind of see. This is really short. I think I did about 15 seconds or 10 seconds here. So here's the clip coming to us from Premiere. It's Adobe stock footage, all right? So a lot of fast motion punches here. Then it cuts to a slow-mo bit where we see our friend in the blue trunks just get pummeled and slammed against the corner of the ropes there, okay? So as you're looking at this, what you need to be thinking about is, what elements of sound do I actually need? Because something that you need to keep in mind when you're doing sound design is that punches, you know, if you watch real boxing, punches don't have any sound. They don't. It doesn't even sound that good. You know, it's just flat, all right? When you watch a film, and I recommend highly, I mean, you can even watch like Creed or something today. I went back to Rocky 3 earlier this week and I was rewatching the final fight scene. It hasn't changed all that much. The sound mixing is a little different. It sounds a little dated, but the punches and the way that it's done is so just, oh man, it's over the top and it puts you on the edge. So, but there's all sorts of elements that are involved in getting those sounds. So when you're watching the video, you need to think about, first and foremost, what elements of sound or action do we need? Do we need to Mickey Mouse? Do we need to mimic with sound design? So obviously for this, number one, punches. And we need different pitches, right? Something that really sets apart good sound design from bad. If every punch is, it's like the same tonality. Yeah, I mean, it'll work. It's just going to sound cheap. You know, there's going to people will watch it and be like, something's off. What's wrong? They may not even know. It's going to feel wrong. All right. Different pitches, different weights and intensities, right? An uppercut, right, is one kind of hit with a certain amount of intensity, but maybe a jab to the chest is a little more staccato and just, again, deeper, not quite as bright. So you need to have a concept of these things because you can also modify them live in the multitrack. Slaps and claps, right, to add some brightness or attack. There's a scene, there's a frame or two in here where they bump gloves, right? So that's not going to be a kind of sound. That's a different sound. So I did some slapping and clapping, I'll show you in a moment, to kind of simulate that. Whooshes, right? Whoosh is so universally useful. Universally useful? It's so useful in so many different types of sound design, right? And I wrote on there, swing and miss, intensify slow-mo. Because you think of whooshes like, you know, you can do it with car sounds, you can do it with your mouth. But watch Creed, watch Rocky 3, watch any Rocky film. When there's a miss, like Clubber Lang misses, now, does it really sound like that? No, of course not. You know, like we're moving massive amounts of, you know, of air, but that's what sells it, right? That's what intensifies the miss. And he's so angry, right? So whooshes, intensify, slow-mo, right? It's like a crescendo to the hit. And then that same punch, right? Talk about different pitches. It's not going to be, because if it's slowed down, you're also going to lower the pitch of that, right? Bigger, lower, grittier, dirtier. All of these things we can do in real time. And then the Foley sounds, right? Because it's not just, but it's the, Right, it's all of that. If this were on Twitch, that would be a good clip right there, right? Okay, breathing, grunting, guttural noises. Now again, you can temper how much of that you want, right? But to really sell it, you need that. And then the last two, crowd and ambience, right? So again, now we're in a gym boxing ring here. We're gonna forget that for the moment. I'm pretending this is like Rocky 3. So you'll see, and I don't know how far we'll get before the end of the day today, but I'll throw this in there. Just by adding in some of that crowd ambience, which by the way, and I'm going to go to the site in just a second, I found this on the BBC site. It just kind of puts you in the environment, right? So all of a sudden, and then you hear, whatever it is, it just kind of sells the visual. And then the last piece, of course, is music. And, you know, as everyone knows, music is really just used to enhance the intensity of the scene. And in this case, that edginess of a boxing match, you know, and that little cut going from real time to slow-mo. Good music is you're going to feel it in your gut. You're going to feel like you're getting punched and pushed into the corners, okay? So you always need to think about, what do I need before you even begin, all right? Okay, now, having said that, I want to show you this site. This is the last bit of web stuff before we enter making these things live here. So here's the URL, all right? bbcsfx.acropolis.org.uk. I'm even going to type it. I'll type it in the chat right here. bbcsfx.acropolis.org.uk. All right. So amazing. Oh, I'm sorry. It's 16,000, not 25,000. Made available. They're in WAV format. Now, here's the thing. So many of these, by the way, and if you look at the categories, I mean, it's like never ending. Atmospheres. It's never ending. There's some things in here I don't even know what they are. All right. Look at this. Braiding machines, buckets, buffers, buffet, building construction, cans, car parks, canteens, chains, chairlift, chatter, cheers, chickens, children, china, chisels, cicadas. You just have so much amazing stuff in here. All right, so we went to like escalators, for instance. And what you'll find is a lot of these, it tells you the duration, the category. You can preview them right here. Okay. Taste of that. A lot of these are from, you know, classic collections. So let's see, if I go to some of the crowd noise, I think it was crowds, right? Crowds. It'll actually tell you, yeah. So look, these are like 1969. Reprocessed means it was reprocessed for stereo because in 69, the BBC was still transmitting in mono. And most of the capture for sound effects, especially in those days, was done in mono. By Busy English Market, 1967. Crowd Panics, 1967. So a lot of these, again, and here's one from 72, right? Small group cheering. It just depends. You know, a lot of these are going to sound older. They may not sound as sort of hi-fi, high fidelity as you're used to. Let's look at the 72 one here. Take a listen to this. It's a very small group cheering, okay? Point being, you have access to these, 16,000 of them. It tells you about your license abilities. It's a little different, you know, for commercial use, all right? But there's links for all that, so you can check that out. Okay. All right. Check on the chat real fast. And... okay. All right. Thank you, Darian. Okay. All right. So let's go ahead and import some sound effects that I've already kind of culled together from the Loopology collection that I showed you, some from the BBC, and a couple additional ones. And I think I've already got this in here. I don't need to reopen that. And Boxing Crowd Loud. We've got that. Okay, so we're going to open the rest of these. Okay. Now, let's talk about punches for a second and getting creative with capturing sounds before we even edit them against the picture. So as I went into our various collections, I didn't find a lot of great punch sounds. Now, a lot of how this is often done is, and I wanted to do this yesterday, if you punch things like meat If you have access to a butcher shop and you can get in and you can like punch big slabs of meat, that really does kind of simulate, it's similar to skin, right? Now you're still going to need other elements there to give it like boom and power and contact and attack. But I didn't have any meat. Actually, I made a tri-tip last night, but I grilled it and then realized, I meant to punch it first. So I didn't do that. So this morning, post-workout, I decided I'm going to punch my abs, and using my trusty iPhone with the standard voice recorder, I'm going to capture some sound. And that is exactly what I did. So you can see the file here, ab punches, M4A, captured in mono. And if you take a quick listen here, this is going to show you what that sounds like. So this is me hitting my abs in the bathroom, which is a little bit reflective, which is good. Take a listen. All right. Ooh. All right. They sound small, right? But you can feel it. You can kind of feel that contact. Some of these have some good bottom end. Now, what I did, I liked the ambience, but there was a little too much noise in here. So I just cleaned them up ever so slightly. By the way, we are going to add ambience back in on everything at the end. That's another quick tip, which I'll show you. Again, we'll probably get to some of it today. We'll finish it next week. But, you know, having sound effects from different libraries means they're all recorded in different places, different microphones, different recorders, analog, digital. So to kind of unify the sound, you want to put them all in the same environment. And a good way, especially for something like this where we're doing action, is to put them in a small ambient reflective space. And you can use Audition's studio reverb to do that and put it on a bus. We'll set that up towards the end, okay? And again, to get rid of a little bit of that, just a little bit of the background ambience, I simply used our real-time denoise effect here, okay? And this just works wonderfully. We're not going to go into details on this if you need that, all right? Now, coming back to some additional files here, I knew that those hits on my abs were pretty good, but I wanted more of that low attack, right? That's kind of what makes you feel it in the theater. So something that I learned years ago was if you want to get that like that, a bit of almost like a whoosh, but it's the power, hit a pillow. Has to be, I have a Tempur-Pedic pillow, so it's very, very dense. It's fantastic. It really, and mixed together, these things just sound like huge whopping sounds. So here is me hitting the Tempur-Pedic pillow.
Pillow punches.
All right. All different pitches too, just naturally. So you can imagine that in combination with some slappy, cracky, in combination with a couple other sounds is really going to deliver a nice punch, right? Okay, so once I have this, if you're going to record any stuff by yourself, what I will typically like to do is to go inside and start making little regions, sectioning off each of my favorite bits. So to do that in Audition, you're simply going to hit shortcut key M to add markers. All right, so I can basically isolate each one of those hits. Maybe I don't like all of them, so I can mark the ones that I want. As you're doing that, they're going to appear, as you can see here, in the markers panel. Now, again, for things like boxing, like we mentioned, you want different pitches, different intensities. Each of these you can even see visually on the waveforms themselves. If I move this out of the way. These two are a little bit louder and more intense than these three right here. And then these two kind of crescendo, get a little bit louder. There's just a little bit more intensity in this one right here. So I labeled them accordingly. So if I go to my sort of final version of these, you can see I only wound up using 4 of them. And I titled them, punch with grunt, subtle thud, low pitch. I gave it a very specific, this is actually a BBC one. I gave it a very specific naming convention. So here we go. Yeah, so we have like mid punch, deep punch. So here's deep punch 2. Here's mid punch 2. It's the same pillow, right? Held in the same spot with the microphone, just hitting it differently with my hand creates different pitches. You want to layer those different pitches in so that it sells, the randomness of skin-to-skin contact, okay? And similarly with the ab punches, same thing. If we go into our markers here, bright punch, bright slap, deep punch, okay? So once you've done that, you can now separate these as individual files. So I'm going to select all of the markers in the markers panel here. And then I'm going to come up to this button, which is Export Audio of Selected Range Markers to Separate Files. Let's go ahead and click on this. All right. Tell it where we want it to go. Punch SFX. All right. Now we don't want to change the sample rate, so we're going to keep this same as source, which is 48K. We'll keep these mono. We don't have to convert them to stereo. You can, of course, but they were recorded in mono. I'll just leave it in mono. And it is in 32-bit, so we'll do same as source. All right. Click OK. It knows where it's going. Wave PCM. The key here is use marker names in file names. You want to make sure that that box is checked because I went through the trouble of bothering to name these so that I know what I'm using. All right. And click Export. And just like that, they are all done. Okay. So if we were to go to File Open here, punch SFX, there they are. So there's all the ones we just created. You can see today, 11:56 a.m. right there. All right, and we're going to do the same thing for the other ones. So let's go to my pillow punches, markers, select, export. It's going to the right place. Okay, it's all the same. Use markers and file names. Okay. Export, it's done. That's how fast Audition batches that, by the way. It's really, really super quick, okay? Okay. Looking at some of these here, okay. LOL, all right, sounds like a slap, haha. Ouch, says Mia. Dang, are you okay? The abs are really coming together, I'm not gonna lie to you, I'm a 4:30 a.m. dude, so yeah, I'm working hard. Mia Health, how about a kick drum? Absolutely. So again, anything that's low-pitched, guttural, a lot of attack, layer it in there, right? Just like I used a Chevy car door to simulate metal clanging to a complete stop, whatever works, right? I mean, that's kind of the idea. You really can just get creative in doing that, all right? Darian's asking, do you find you need to create your own homebrew sound effects? Yeah, because, again, it just depends what kind of libraries you have. Now, I bought libraries back in the 80s, so I have a lot of sound effects. I don't have all of them accessible here. So a lot of times, I can tell you right now, the Foley stuff, we won't get to it today, but next week, the breathing and I have some that have some grunts. We're going to do it right here. Like, we'll do it live. It'll work. It sells it. And I usually always add a couple of my own little elements in there just to differentiate the sounds a little bit. All right. Diego, Jason can take a beating. All right. Nice. Okay. Dr. Jekyll and Hyde. What kind of pillow was Jason butchering? It's the Tempur-Pedic, the Swedish Tempur-Pedic pillows. Very dense, right? The foam fits to your head, your body. They're really fantastic. Okay. And again, it's just the idea that you're using something to create a different sound for that attack. Okay? Sweet. All right. So once you do that, now we're moving on to starting to lay out what it is that we're going to work with. All right? And you probably already noticed that I have a series of markers in the multi-track as well. The reason for that is that I like to, in advance of adding any kind of sound, just figure out roughly or frame accurately where I'm going to need sounds in the first place. Now, the reason for this is because I'll lay down an initial sound, which we're going to do at all of these locations, and then start to build it up. So, for instance, what we'll likely do at each one of these marker points, and we're going to go through them, is just add one tap, just so that we can kind of watch it back and just check for timing and see if it's overall kind of what we're going for, or if it worked, right? Okay. So, again, I tend to want to scrub through this. Now, by the way, this is a preference that I disable. You'll find it under playback and recording. But as I'm doing this now, we're putting the audio in here live. But when I'm doing sound design like this, I usually don't play audio while scrubbing. I just find it irritating. If you JKL, so you use JKL for reverse, stop, play, and double speed forward or back, that will allow you to hear the audio as you're shuttling. Scrubbing, though, as you're dragging the mouse cursor, it just, for me, for this kind of work, it gets very irritating real quickly, especially if you have a lot that you're doing for one particular sound. So I disable that. You can do whatever you like. Another thing to keep in mind, now you may have noticed that the video here is displaying 2 flavors of time code. So the top one, this is a 25 FPS clip off of Adobe stock, so probably shot in the UK. The top one here, or somewhere in Europe for that matter, the top one here was burned in through Media Encoder. So I used a burn in on export to add that. The bottom one is being shown based on my timeline settings here in Audition. And that's showing minutes, seconds, and in this case, milliseconds, okay? Going against the time view that we're looking at here. The reason for that, of course, is that Audition allows you to work at the subframe level, right? In Premiere Pro, we refer to this as, if you've ever right-clicked in a timeline, and you see there's an option there to show audio time units, which, by the way, I don't know what that means. What it is showing you are samples. Audio time units, still, 20 years. I don't know why it says that, to be honest. He's very honest, isn't he? But that's what it is. It's showing you samples. And what that means when you go into show audio time units is that you can slip and slide audio at the subframe level. You're not snapped to frames as you typically are. So of course, Audition is always working that way. And I like to have the dual timecode references there. If you just right click on the video in Audition, and you want to make sure that the video panel is revealed, you can find that under the window menu. If you go into video preferences, you'll see that this is where you can adjust your timecode settings. So you can enable it, you can tell it where you want it to go. I kept it in the center just to keep things kind of looking cool and collected right there. You can move it around, you can adjust the opacity and the size, the background box opacity, session or media timecode, whatever is relevant here. But that's why there's 2 timecodes, in case you were wondering about that, all right? So again, I tend to like to scrub through it, and I'll zoom in a bit here, all right? And we're gonna look for that first hit, which is right approximately there, okay? Now you'll notice that I backed off on that marker ever so slightly, all right? It's actually a little bit before the frame action. That's because typically the sound happens, we're talking samples here. Remember, there's 48,000 samples per second versus 25 frames per second. So typically you want the sound, that first initial movement of that punch to happen a couple of, samples before the action here, which is why I said it like that, all right? And by the way, B and W represents B for blue trunk, white for white shirt. I think he's wearing white trunks as well. Okay, so same thing here. You can see right there, hits his head, right? M to add a marker, and you can see it added a new marker in there. And by the way, you can see what I've done in here is I've labeled what each one of those different markers represents, right? So this one, if I just double click, it'll go right there, is a punch, right? B punch, W punch. This one, WP. So this is white trunks, punch, miss, whoosh. So there's 2 things happening here. This guy's punching. This guy is trying to punch, but the guy ducks and he misses it, right? So we need 2 actions here. So that's why I labeled it that way. Okay, let's keep on going. They're gonna wrestle a little bit here. So here we go. White punch, so left. So here he's got a little combo. Left, right, left, right, left, right. And I even put punch right with whoosh, because if you just hear, that's one thing. If you hear, you're really gonna feel it, right? So sometimes you can time a super fast whoosh into the hit. I've been watching Rocky for days, I'm telling you, it's so great. So all those things combined can work together. The whoosh isn't just for missing. Sometimes it's the crescendo to the punch, right? This is where you got to use put your thinking caps on, all right? And then as we continue to go through, here's the gloves slapping together, all right? Again, we need a different sound for that. And then a soft hit. He punches him, white trunks, punch. Here's a big swing and a miss. Now, I've already laid this one in for you, and I just want to show you, again, real simply. So here I took my whoosh single, all right? And again, the action, it starts out here, right? Because the whoosh isn't, it's where, you know, when the arm is pulled back, it's that whole motion. So he's off screen. So you can see, remember what I was saying? Is that there's a little bit of a, you know, there's a natural, the sound of that initial movement before the loudness of the whoosh. So that happens just before the marker. And then the main loudness happens kind of as we cross the center plane there, all right? And if you just take a look and listen to this, it's kind of give you an idea of what it sounds like, all right? Oh, wait. Do I have it muted? I have it muted. Sorry. Right? It's so fast, but it works. Right. That's where you got to start thinking about the grunts. And then again, we've got the guy in the white trunks here, just power hit. And then right hook. So power hits him with the left. And then left hook, whoosh. And I didn't even get the second hit yet. Or no, actually he missed right there. He was just recoiling his right arm. Okay? All right. Yes, Jason is actually in the ring. I want to hear one of the fighters start crying. Ah, now. All right. Nice. Thank you, Diego. Okay. Okay. So let's start adding in some of those initial hits, right? So again, we're not going to worry about layering it all today. Maybe we'll even just get one. But we just want to start laying in some of those initial punches. Now you can set up your tracks however you like for this. You can see I've only got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 tracks to layer. If we need more, we can add more, all right? It just, you know, you can do it however you want. This is the default. There's 6 tracks in a session by default. I think I added 1 for some additional ambience down there, which I'm going to use right here. This is ambience 2. Okay. So let's come over to our files now. And again, we have all of our punches. Now I'm going to take this ab punches. This is the combined file. Let's take that out. And I'm going to take out the pillow punch as well, because we're going to open up now the individual punches that we just exported. Okay. So here we go. Bring all those in here. All right. So when we're in the Files panel, all right, we can preview them by clicking on this little speaker icon. This will auto-play the sound effect. So I'll go ahead and turn this on so I can kind of audition them before we drop it in. And actually, I think I need to put my headphones on so I can hear this a little bit better. All right. These all really kind of are doing it for me. All right, so let's grab this one. And we'll drop it in here. And let's just see, timing-wise, if we need to slip it. All right, looks pretty good. Let's go with our other punch. It sounds so puny, right? But you get the idea, right? This is just one. We have to layer this a bunch of times. But the idea it already feels like, look at me smiling. It already feels like something, you know? And that's what's so cool is that you can really get a sense of how this is all going to come together. Now, you notice that I put it on separate tracks. In theory, I could do something like this. I mean, these don't have that much decay. And again, we're going to add ambience anyway. I could stack all of the initial hits on the same track if I wanted to. And that's kind of a decent housekeeping idea. All right. Now this one, remember, we've got a hit and a whoosh for this third one. So let's see what we got here. Ooh, maybe a bright slap for that face hit. I almost said the B word, slap. Can I say that? Bitch slap? What's that? Okay, we got to get that whoosh in there as well. All right, so let's come over here. Now we've also got, I grabbed these whip crack samples from the BBC. So whip crack, if you've seen, they used to use this in radio plays, and they still do on Broadway and stuff. If you've never seen what a whip crack looks like, it's a very strange instrument, but it creates this kind of a sound. Now you can tell just by the ambient noise that this sounds like this was done in the 60s or even the 50s. Oh, now that's not bad. It's kind of a double hit. Something about this one is doing it for me. So I'm going to go ahead and copy this to a new file. All right. Let's cut off the beginning. Let's do a smooth little fade in. This is by the way, our non-destructive fade handle, so you can see how it affects. We're just going to do a real quick fade so that it's just a nice clean beginning, and fade out the ending. All right, now it has that other secondary sound in there. We're just going to fade that out. Yeah. And if I take a look at this spectrally, it's got some noise in there. So maybe we'll see. This one might not work because again, it's old, you know. So let's see if this denoiser does it. Let's do all frequency and try about 50%. Before, after. Works for me, right? Oh, but it was too aggressive. Maybe, but this is going to be layered, so it's not going to matter, okay? We'll call this whip, crack, slap. And we're going to put it into Punch SFX and come over here. All right, and let's check out our whooshes. Okay, now that's obviously too long and too big. And I'm thinking about the dude who did it. Maybe it's more... I like this. Copy it to new. Get rid of the end. Tail it. Make it a little louder. All right, clean up the end. Go ahead and save. All right. And we'll call this single whoosh mid-range flop, because that's kind of a little floppy sound. Why did you name it that way? I don't know. I make up weird names all the time. All right, so let's bring that whoosh here. And because the actions happen at the same time, that's technically where the hit is. So the hit's right there. They really do happen at the same time. So now this is going to get a little interesting, right? So you can see our guy in the blue trunks. The whoosh really could probably be backed off a little bit. But what I'm thinking is, let's mute the hit and let's just focus on the whoosh for a second. We may need to elongate the whoosh. Let's see. Actually, hot damn. It's like in perfect sync. It just works. Now, if I wanted to lower the pitch of this, I think the higher pitched one works. If we go into the Properties panel, which again, you can access from the Window menu, we're going to go into the Stretch mode. Now, we can do real-time clip stretching. We'll do a bit of this in a moment here. We've got about 11 minutes to go. Sorry, 9 minutes to go. Let's go into real-time mode. And then you've got 3 different options. Okay, monophonic, polyphonic, or vari-speed. Now, if you want to maintain the pitch of a sound effect, but you want to adjust its duration, you would likely choose monophonic or polyphonic, because it's going to give you independent control over adjusting duration without affecting pitch, or adjusting pitch without affecting duration. However, for things like this, especially when you start, we were talking about slow-mo, where you have like, right? We really want this same thing to just be elongated and lower. We're going to use vari-speed, and this simulates what tape machines would do, right? If you wanted to elongate something, you slowed it down. And by slowing it down, the pitch also drops. So this would be something I would typically do. So I'm going to go ahead and go into vari-speed mode here. Now, I'm not going to adjust duration, but I do want the pitch to drop a little bit. So, we can adjust the duration ever so slightly. Actually, you know what? For this, I take that back. What am I saying? I don't want to adjust duration at all. I just want to adjust pitch. So we're going to go into monophonic. Let's drop this maybe about 2 semitones. Maybe, let's see what 6 semitones sounds like. All right, let's watch it against the video. It doesn't feel right for this, right? The higher pitched one just felt better. Something about it just worked more naturally. And if we turn both of them on now, right, we're kind of losing a bit of that because that whoosh isn't quite as loud. So again, we could do a little volume adjust on here just for the moment. And maybe even do a little subtle panning. I'm grabbing the blue pan lines here, so we can kind of make this a little bit more stereo, which should enable us to hear these a little bit better. Oh, cool. Yeah? All right, cool. Okay. And let's go ahead and add a couple of our additional initial punches here. So left, left, right, left, right. And we want a big whoosh on this one so that we really feel it, okay? So let's come back over here. Again, these are just the initial punches. Maybe deep punch for the second one. And maybe deep punch for the first. See, I'm changing my mind. And let's do that slap for this one. And we need a deep whoosh. Let's see if we can make this work. All right. Oh, is this oh, it's 96K? Okay. This came to me from one of our Adobe Assets short film from one of our esteemed mates. All right. So for this one here, first of all, I need to shrink this up, right? Because it's too long. Also, we're going to drop the volume on this because I can tell it's already just really hot. Let's drop this about 5 dB. You will notice that in the upper right and left corners of your clips, you have this little stretch icon. There's a little white triangle there. By the way, this is enabled by clicking on this radio button at the top of the multitrack, Global Clip Time Stretching. So this is going to allow you to squeeze that sound in, again, by default, without affecting the pitch. So let's see. I've got it in monophonic. So the pitch will stay the same, but we just adjusted duration. Let's move this in. Let's see how that sounds. It's okay. Let's see if we do polyphonic, if that works better. It's getting a little artifacted. Ooh, there we go. That might be it. All right. And maybe that's not the one, right? Maybe this one would work better there. Let's see. Maybe all three. All right. Wow, and that last hit is so tough. I mean, you really feel it hitting him in the face. All right. I've got like 3 minutes. Let's see if I can get these other hits in here, okay? So a glove hit. So let's do some mid punches for the glove hits. And we'll do like 2 of those. Over here, 1 second. Let me move this out. Just the timing. And he's got a soft hit right here, and then a big punch right there. So let's go and add our. Here's another one. All right, we're going to shrink this up. How's it going in the chat? Polyphonic spree. Haha. Yes, indeed. All right. All right, you hear that whoosh that's already in there? And let's get a soft hit. So we need glove, soft hit. Well, that's a good one. Why didn't I use that? Let's do this one. All right. It's coming together. Swing and a miss. Then we got a soft hit again. So we'll set that right in here. Getting so close to end of time. I mean, end of our time. All right. This one's got a little too much at the top there. Did I miss the... Yeah, see, it actually happens here. My marker's in the wrong place. It's a soft hit. All right. And then we've got a power hit. Right there. Feels like it's actually right there. All right. And then one final right hook, which I think we'll use one of these. All right. And maybe we'll just throw a little singular whoosh in there too. All right. So, all together now. All right. And now let's add back in a little bit of that crowd noise. Okay? All right, my friends, there is so much more that we could do, but we are out of time. So thank you so much for watching. We've got our XD challenge coming up next. Stick around and we'll see you next time. All right, take care. Bye-bye.